have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey folks, you're listening to the best of the Paul Harrell program.
From District 17, you think the people are going to be paying more to the government than they were?
I think there's a chance they will, Paul. And I'll tell you why. A big part of that is obviously the e-fairness, the internet tax. And nobody can tell me definitively what that collection's going to be. So we had a corporate income tax, measure built into that bill, which is, obviously politics. Hard to vote against an income tax cut.
Representative Stephen Meeks, do you think the people, when it's all said and done, are going to be paying more in taxes to the government, meaning a net tax increase after this session? Because the way I look at DFNA's numbers, that appears to be the case, Stephen.
I can't argue with you. I think that's the case. We did the one large tax cut, obviously, and but yeah, I think overall you're correct. Yes, the amount of money that the average Arkansan is going to be paying because of the 92nd General Assembly will go up versus down. Yep.
Senator Terry Rice is back with us.
I carried the bill past Senate Bill 336, additional revenue for maintenance and repair of highway, streets, and bridges, $95 million. It is a percentage increase in wholesale gas increase. We broke the ceiling in that. Some people don't talk about it. If you think about the ceiling, it does now have general funds in that bill.
On that, do you think, some of these revenue increases from the people to the government, you think that's because of, we were supposed to only be paying $50 million in, to Arkansas Works, and it ended up costing us $138 this year. So
no doubt, Paul.
No doubt.
You and I and people that are attending to it know that. That's what's driving the whole thing.
State Representative Spencer Hawks, do you think the amount of money the people are giving to the government is going to increase?
As far as what I think Arkansans are going to walk away with, long term, I think they will see more money in their pockets. Short term, I think it's kind of a net neutral situation.
State Representative Dwight Tosh.
In the next couple of fiscal years, the people of Arkansas are going to be paying more money to the government, not less.
Oh, wow, that's a great question. And I think a lot of it, Paul, depends. I think it depends on each individual. How much do you drive an automobile? How much will you pay more in fuel tax?
Overall, tax burden on the people in terms of, is the government going to be getting more money because of changes in the tax policy?
I think probably overall I'd have to say probably, obviously your answer would like to be less, but I think there's a strong possibility it could be a little more.
State Senator Gary Stubblefield, do you think at the end of the day, especially in the next couple fiscal years, the people are going to be paying more money to the government than they were, or less money?
I think until all these kick in, that in the short term we're going to be paying more. I don't think there's any question about that until these tax cuts actually kick in.
We've got State Representative Grant Hodges is with us. He represents District 96.
Unfortunately, I think this is probably my least favorite one. I was a little bit disappointed with the session overall, and the reason being, when I kind of looked back and thought, what were some of the big conservative wins of the session? I didn't see a lot there. We didn't get anything meaningful done really on school choice, and I'm on the education committee, so that's something I've watched 3 sessions in a row be defeated. I didn't see anything on tort reform, really nothing significant on Medicaid reform, nothing on ethics reform, which was really disappointing.
So you think when it's all said and done, the people of Arkansas are going to be paying more money to the government than they were before the 92nd General Assembly?
Yes, I do. and I would be interested to have someone give me the opposite case. But from my perspective, it definitely seems like taxes at the end of the day will be going up, certainly because, as you talked about already, a lot of these tax increases take effect soon this year, and a lot of our tax cuts take effect in the future. Hopefully they'll take effect in the future. But, when you look at it with the highway tax vote, the highway taxes we just implemented, the online sales tax, the tobacco tax, and what we did with the cell phone fees. At the end of the day, I just don't see how, even with the income taxes that we've passed the last 3 sessions, I'm afraid that your average Arkansan is going to be paying more, and I'm worried that they're going to be really disappointed and feel disenfranchised, disencouraged, because the messaging is, we have this Republican supermajority, taxes are being cut, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of people are going to be looking at their bank accounts at the end of the year and wondering why they're not seeing it.
State Representative Jack Ladyman is with us. I'm wondering what you think at the end of the day. Are the people, especially in the first couple fiscal years, the people are going to be paying more money to the government than they were before the session? Do you agree with that?
That's possible, Paul. I don't know. I am kind of a numbers person, but I haven't really looked at that. And I understand that idea or that thought.
Yeah.
And that may be true. I'm not sure.
State Representative Jim Dotson.
Often easy to focus on the turds, and this year there were some big stinky ones, especially in the area of taxation. From my viewpoint, there are 2 ways to spell tax, T-A-X and F-E-E. Sadly, both of them have the same effect, taking the hard-earned money out of the pockets of Arkansans and putting it under the control of the government. Although I've not added up all the new taxes and fees versus reductions, if you include the half-cent sales tax, if that gets extended, or not extended but made permanent, I would suspect that probably more money will be coming out of the pockets of Arkansans after the 92nd General Assembly than before, which is highly disappointing, especially since the 92nd General Assembly actually enacted some of the best tax policy overall in state history.
Folks, welcome back to the program. We've got State Representative Joe Cloud is back with us, I've got internet sales tax that these are DFNA's numbers projected to raise $43 million from the people. Then you look at the cigarette paper tax increase, that's $720,000. Gas tax increase, $57,000. And part of the reason is these taxes, the internet tax starts to be collected in July. The gas tax begins to be collected in October. The tax cuts don't fully go into effect. At the end of the day, after you guys meet, are we paying the same amount to the government? Are we going to pay more? Or are we going to pay less?
That bottom line.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Well, I totally agree, and that's what's important, right? It's the bottom line. That's what people have to pay. And once again, I don't guess I'm smart enough to know all these projections. I just know what we're told on the projections. And again, you do have a legitimate point that it's not happening right now, but over the next couple of years.
And State Representative Jimmy Gazaway joins us. You think the people will be paying more money to the government, when it's all said and done than before?
Yeah, that's a real concern of mine. I mean, I can't say that for certain. Again, that's part of why I say I think we'll have to wait and see. But I think that's certainly a possibility, at least for some folks, depending on where you fall in the spectrum.
Representative John Payton, you're one of 12 Republicans that voted no on all 3 of those bills. So how did you stand up to the establishment's argument saying this? We've got to have more money from the people.
Well, again, I've been there for 6 years, and revenue has continued to increase over that time. I had the figures in my head and could quote them readily during the session, but I think it was over $800 million worth of revenue growth since I've been in there. And my argument is we do need the funding for roads and bridges for highway program, but it's been there, and we could have done it just purely through growth. And Jonathan Barnett introduced a bill, and I'm trying to think who reintroduced one, Julie Mayberry, this go-around, that would have just taken some growth in sales tax revenue, even limited to automobiles and car parts and things, and devoted that to roads and bridges. And if we had done that 6 years ago, that problem would be cured now. If we had done it in this session, it'd be cured in a very short period of time going forward.
Do you think the people of Arkansas are paying more money to the government after the 92nd General Assembly than before?
Absolutely. I think it's been proven in the numbers that we got for this month, a record month in revenue. And most of those laws and bills have not even taken place. But what seems to happen over and over again is when we project down the road how much a tax cut is going to reduce revenue, it seems to get over projected. And when we project down the road 8 or 10 years how much a tax increase or a revenue increase of some kind, how much it's going to bring in, that seems to get underestimated.
Yes.
And so, I'm very leery when they say that they're going to bring a balanced bill, that is revenue neutral, because that's based on projections 8 or 10 years down the road, and they made the math come out as revenue neutral, but I'm very suspicious most of the time as to whether or not it's going to play out that way. I had a bill that would have given some sales tax relief on cheaper used cars and raised the exemption from $4,000 to $7,500. When you buy a car under $7,500, it would have been exempt from sales tax. It had a revenue impact of a little over $12 million. And so they were asking me, how are you going to pay for it? They're in this mindset, that you have to pay for a tax cut. And I went to BLR jokingly and said, how do I draft an appropriation bill to pay for a tax cut? I mean, it's that absurd.
Yeah.
But anyway, I kept telling them over and over again, revenue growth will easily cover this $12 million hit to the budget.
Welcome back to the program. We've got Senator Kim Hammer. Do you think the people of Arkansas in the next fiscal year are going to end up paying more money as a net tax increase to the government?
Well, we keep there's actually a running chart on that. I'm going to be up to Capitol this week and going to get the updated version of it. I'll be glad to share it with you. I think if all the taxes that were successful this time around get out there and you apply the tax credits, I think it's going to end up, and I'm looking at the 100,000 foot level as far as how it affects each individual class or taxpayer. There probably will be winners and losers. But when you look at the overall money out, I think you're going to see that the increases were there. More taxes being collected than being returned.
State Representative Josh Miller, what was your impression of the session 2019?
Well, I thought there was some of it that was good, and some of it that sucked. And if you're a taxpayer in Arkansas, you probably weren't that happy. If you're a freeloader in the state of Arkansas, you came out okay.
It looks like the people of Arkansas are going to be paying more money to the government.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I mean, we did cut some taxes, had the income tax reduction, and that was a good thing. But then, we're raising the gas taxes and all the other little ways that you get nickeled and dimed. That's not good. We are going to be paying more into the government. When the projection numbers were released here not too long ago, and we were in, let's say, council when that happened or when we heard it, we realized that we were going to be getting enough extra revenue just from a better economy.
Wow.
That we could have pretty much taken care of the highway problem without raising taxes one bit. But that's not what we did.
Senator Mark Johnson, when it's all said and done, fiscal year 2020, fiscal year 2021, do you think the people of Arkansas will be paying more to the government than before you guys had your recent session?
Well, Paul, let me answer it this way. I think in the short run, we're going to see some things that we're paying more to the government, but I think in the long run, we're going to start seeing some things kick in, including the 5.9%, where we're paying less to the government. Now, part of that is going to be because simply the economy's doing well, and we have some triggers that can allow things to other revenue sources to start to phase out. Of course, the grocery tax is pretty well gone. I'd like to see it completely gone, and to all my friends that like the 1/8 cent conservation tax, I don't think that was good policy in the first place to put that in the Constitution. Even though good things are done with it, I think that we should take that off the groceries too. I don't think there should be any tax on groceries at all, and we should implement that as soon as we can. Bottom line to your question, I think that we're in the middle of something, and I think it's something that the rest of the General Assembly needs to step up to. Yes, we've done the things on the tax side, and I hope in 2021 we start doing some things on the spending side.
State Representative Mark Lowry is with us.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms. First, you can catch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. Here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. And that goes for Android users as well. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars. Learn more at conduitnews.com. So, I want to introduce you to a gentleman that I met last week. I was introduced by a friend. We had some pretty good phone conversation. Very fascinating. He's an Arkansan. His name is Bob Rodweller. Bob, how are you, sir? Good morning to you.
I'm great, thank you.
Hey, thanks for coming on the program. Now, the reason I want to have you on is because I think you have a very interesting perspective as somebody who, well, when did you move to Arkansas, sir?
2012.
Okay, so 2012, so relatively new. But so let's just start from the beginning. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Maryland. I grew up in Maryland and spent my life there. My parents moved from Princeton, out of Princeton, New Jersey, to Baltimore to be around Hopkins and
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Hey folks, you're listening to the best of Conduit News Radio with me, Paul Harrell.
Representative Mark Lowry is with us. Looks like when it's all said and done, it's a net tax increase. What do you think?
Well, I'd say that that's probably true, especially if you look at the taxes that would most affect lower income, lower middle income constituents. Gave them a tax cut, but then turned around, and with the motor fuel tax, it probably more disproportionately affects the lower class. So, with one hand we gave, and then with the other hand we took away. So that's probably one of those areas where I don't know if it's necessarily a net increase to that particular part of the constituency, but it's something that I think the lower income folks, lower middle class, everyone's going to feel the sting of the motor fuel tax.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Yeah, and I hear legislators all the time talking about they voted their constituency, what their constituency was telling them. I've never specifically done that. There's not been a lot of issues where I felt like my constituency in Maumelle felt a certain way that was maybe cutting across the tide. But this time, we're building a interchange in Maumelle for a third entrance. And the city of Maumelle, the constituents of Maumelle, ended up having to vote themselves a half-cent tax increase to pay for that, because the Department of Transportation really provided them very little money. So I felt like voting for my constituency meant, listen, we've already put a tax burden on ourselves locally to pay for the major road work that we're going to need. I don't think it's right to also put on top of that an increase in the motor fuel tax, at least as far as voting for my constituency.
Yeah. Program, we got the majority leader on the line, State Representative Marcus Richmond. What was your impression of the session 2019?
Well, I have to say, mixed. A mixed feeling towards it. I think that we did do a few things that were really good. I do believe that we raised too many taxes. That bothers me. It's always, we always overestimate just how much we're going to give people in a tax break, and then we underestimate how much a tax is going to cost the folks. And so overall, I feel that when you get right down to it, there's probably, maybe not everybody, but there'll be some that there's more money coming out of their pocket than what they're getting back.
State Representative Mickey Gates on the line. How did you come to those conclusions in light of the fact that the leadership had a lot of arguments for each one of these bills as to why you needed to vote to get more money from the people?
Well, I as a principle, I'm not opposed to the people voting for themselves on what rate they're taxed. I overall support that idea. In fact, I think even though we live in a representative form of government, some thinks it's weak for us to make the decision ourselves. But I think on something that is important as raising taxes, I'm not opposed to the people voting for themselves and living with whatever decision they make. So the principle of allowing the people themselves to vote is not offensive to me. However, I was in county government 20 years and now in my 5th year in the legislature. I'm not going to go to the people with the recommendation of a tax until I believe all other options have been utilized. And because for me to refer something to the people to say, hey, we don't have enough money for this, is exactly that. And I think that there are other monies that could be expended.
Was it a net tax increase?
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms. First, you can catch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. Here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. And that goes for Android users as well. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
That's where I grew up. Loved the state, but it was time.
It was
time
time
to move.
Yeah. Okay, so born in and raised in Maryland, and military career?
Spent 7 years in the Army, 15 months in Vietnam. I'd gone for my second tour. We volunteered to do the second tour, and a friend of mine and I we mixed it up with a 122 rocket, the Rocket 1, and we were sent home. And I spent the next 5 years with the 11th Group for Special Forces out of Fort Meade, Maryland.
Wow.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hey folks, you're listening to the best of Conduit News Radio with me, Paul Harrell.
Is exactly that, and I think that there are other monies that could be expended.
Was it a net tax increase? Was it a net tax cut? What do you think?
My impression when we kind of walk away with there would probably be a slight increase in tax.
If you use DFNA's own numbers and that first fiscal year.
I have no confidence. I have no confidence in DFA numbers.
Well, even their own numbers.
I know. I have no confidence. I mean, you look at what they did to Les Warren.
State Representative Nelda Speaks, thanks so much for coming on the program this morning. After the 92nd General Assembly, we're going to be giving more to the government. Do you agree with that?
I do. I agree very much. The one thing that really bothers me about the highway, I feel like, yes, we have we passed a law that the highway departments will have to start stepping up and telling us, giving us some things where they're going to use money on. But it's almost like we give these just a blank check to people, and we do not know where they're going to spend it. What roads they're going to fix, what highways they're going to work on, and I think we need to hear. We need to know before you start doing that.
Yeah.
But on the other side of this thing, we passed, 2 years ago, the tax on the tires.
Yes.
Which was to bring $1 million in. That went into just our regular income to be used for just the regular things.
Mm-hmm.
And why didn't that go for the highway?
Yeah.
I mean, there's $1 million right there. And so we don't look for places that should be going to your highways.
We have State Representative Rick Beck is on the line. How did you stand up to the arguments of, the establishment types that were saying, we got to take more money from the people? What basis did you use to make your no decision?
Well, one of the things I look at, and by the way, many of those taxes actually supported initiatives that I support. So that was fine, but I thought that we were going about it the wrong way. Gas tax in Arkansas, I think, really hurts the people that we are trying that we should be trying to help. The effort there is, Arkansas is a rural state. People driving back and forth to work, when you increase the taxes on their gasoline, that hits their bottom line. So I think that's a very crippling tax in that aspect. The other thing was, as far as the half a cent, sending the half a cent, not letting it sunset, I really felt like we should have handled that ourselves. It's almost like we're pushing that back down to the voters as opposed to taking care of some of that stuff ourselves.
Do you think that the people of Arkansas, State Representative Rick Beck, are paying or will be paying more money to the government after the 92nd General Assembly?
Well, yes.
Please welcome back to the program. We've got State Representative Robin Lundstrom on the line. She's from District 87. When it's all said and done after this session, at least for the next few fiscal years, that the people of Arkansas are going to be paying more money to the government than they were before.
I do think we are in some areas. We have $7.1 billion of revenue. So we could, just a spending cut of maybe 1%, we could put that towards highways. So there's ways to do that.
State Director for Americans for Prosperity, Arkansas, we got Mr. Ryan Norris is with us. What was your impression of the session 2019?
Well, it was kind of a, as every session is, kind of a mixed bag in a way. If session would have ended about 2 weeks in and everybody would have been able to go home, I think I would have had a much better session than how it ended up towards the end there. But there were some positive things, and so I like to focus on that at the moment. We did bring down the top marginal rate with that Senate Bill 211. That was great. There were some other bills out there that I think were very helpful in bringing down some corporate taxes, doing the carry forwards, those kind of things. But then, of course, you get into the highway funding, which was kind of the theme, I guess, of this session. I mean, that was where we were all going. They were trying to get the good stuff out of the way first, so that then they could come around the back end and increase our gas taxes, and then put the come over the ballot question for us in 2020. So
the half-cent sales tax.
Half-cent sales tax. Yeah. So all of this said and done, I'm not quite convinced that it was a net positive for the taxpayer. I'm seeing by my numbers that, for the foreseeable future, we're still paying a little more out of pocket for our government than previous to the session. I would like to see that change.
State Representative Brant Smith is with us in studio. What I want to know, Brant, is what do you think? I've got the DFNA numbers, but do you agree that the people are going to be paying more money to the government than they were before?
And I've listened to other legislators that have come on your program, and I think the consensus is probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have on the phone line the host of the Dave Ellswick Show, Mr. Dave Ellswick.
We're finding out as we go along who the true conservatives are and who the pseudo-conservatives are. Well, taxes, not cutting back on government, but expanding government. I mean, those are conservative Republican clauses that the legislature didn't deal with, and didn't deal with them well.
I think it would have been better if they would have said, okay, listen, we've got to have X amount of dollars more from the people. I mean, I still would have hated this, but, X amount of dollars more from the people, we got to have it. But we found $50-60 million in cuts or savings that we're going to use for roads or whatever. So we found that, and we only need, $30 million from the taxpayer. I mean, that would have at least been a little bit easier to swallow, but we didn't even have that conversation, it seems.
Oh, no, we didn't. We had that conversation back in 2013 when Beebe was the governor, and the bill moved along, and then it just suddenly disappeared and got squashed. When State Representative Mayberry brought it back up, I thought this is good, but it came up so late into the session that it didn't have a real chance to, I think, gain any kind of traction. That's the one that I've been watching all along and been hoping that they'll follow all along, but I don't think we're going to see it, Paul, and I think maybe you would agree with me on this. We won't see it until the present occupant that's in the governor's office has run his course as governor of the state.
Welcome, State Representative Aaron Pilkington. When it's all said and done, this is going to be a net tax increase on the people after the session as opposed to before the session?
Well, hopefully it's been a net decrease, and I haven't seen the latest numbers from DFNA yet, because there's always the projection, and then there's the reality of what happened, and so that's kind of what I'm more interested to see is the reality of those numbers come in. I hope ultimately that larger tax that we gave them in the beginning of the session will show that ultimately there is a decrease in collections. Same with the reduction in the corporate taxes that was passed as well. But it's just one of those things we'll have to see.
State Representative Dan Sullivan, what was your impression of the session 2019?
Well, Paul, I was disappointed this year. We had several big issues up, and we'll talk about them here in a few minutes, but we pass a lot and we move through a lot of things, but the big issues that come up, and I think you're going to bring them up here in a second, our gas taxes, our highway bill, those kind of issues were the key issues, and all of them moved through rather quickly without much dissent or much opportunity to discuss other options. For example, the highway bill is a good one. Most people don't know there were 3 or 4 different bills out there that would have funded the highways equally. The governor's bill passed without much dissent. There were a few of us that held out for other bills, but you come out looking like you're against highway funding, when really there were at least three bills out there, 3 good ones out there, that would have funded the highways without a highway tax increase and the accompanying gas tax increase and the accompanying constitutional amendment to increase the tax.
Wow. The question has been, are people going to be paying more, less, or the same? As the net tax burden, or is the tax burden going to be increased, lowered, or stay the same?
Well,
what do you
I think that'll be spun, or there'll be different spin on how that works. There'll be people that take this select group of bills and say, well, my package of bills actually reduces taxes over tax increases. But then when you combine all of the tax increases that we got with the tax cuts that we got, I think we're going to be paying more in the long run. We'll see.
President of the Family Council on the line.
Well, I'll start with the good. The good is that I believe we could have passed just about any pro-life, anti-abortion type legislation that we would have wanted to pass. And in fact, when I look at the list, altogether the legislature passed about 13 laws to protect the sanctity of human life, most of which restrict abortions.
So, Jerry, you said I'll start with the good. So does that mean there is a bad?
Well, you consider what could have been with overwhelming Republican majorities all over the Capitol, with people that will all tell you how, that they're Christian and they're conservative and all these things. And yet we didn't see a bathroom bill filed this session that would protect the safety and welfare of women and girls when they walk into a bathroom or walk into a changing facility somewhere at a public pool or other, types of situations. We didn't see any legislation whatsoever to protect their privacy. we didn't see any legislation go anywhere regarding conscience protection for healthcare workers. For example, there's great pressure on people in the medical professions now to be a part of gender reassignment surgeries on children and a lot of just crazy stuff like that that the LGBTQ community is promoting and trying to coerce doctors and healthcare workers from being a part of some things that are just wrong. And we didn't see any legislation go forward that would protect that. We didn't see any legislation go forward that would protect faith-based adoption and foster care agencies who have been in the adoption and foster care business forever, you know, your Catholic agencies, your Protestant agencies out here. But because of their doctrinal stand, their faith, they don't want to place adoptive or foster care kids with same-sex couples. And so in other states, these agencies are being run out of business because the state will take away their license if they don't compromise their faith and put kids where they believe they shouldn't be. And so we wanted to see that protected here in Arkansas. Again, didn't go anywhere. And so there's a problem with that.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms.
First, you can catch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. Here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. And that goes for Android users as well.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
Okay, and so after military service, you went to school.
Well, when I went to school, I got my undergraduate degree in computer science and business, and went on to get my graduate work, and had a lot of fun with that. It's something I've always wanted to do: be a computer scientist, work on computers.
Wow.
Kind of a techie kind of guy.
Yeah.
But it has been, and I continue to enjoy it because I'm still teaching classes. I'm going to teach a class in the fall on artificial intelligence up here in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah.
So it's kept me busy.
That's great. And where do you teach at?
Over the University of Arkansas.
U of A. Okay, that's great. Artificial intelligence. Okay.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hey folks, you're listening to the best of Conduit News Radio with me, Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. We've got with us the Texas director for the Gun Owners of America. Rachel Malone is back with us. Rachel, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So glad that you're up with us this morning. And I saw this, and this is why I wanted to have you on. We haven't really talked about this, but there's something that's being pushed through the Senate right now, the Violence Against Women Act. And, you know, with a title like that, how in the world, would there be anything wrong with it? But there's some gun language in there, isn't there?
Absolutely, there is, and you're right. I mean, how can anybody oppose something that helps keep women safe? But it's just a disguise to try to push through red flag laws and gun control.
I saw your piece up at gunowners.org. Why women oppose the Violence Against Women Act. So, I mean, why is the Violence Against Women Act actually not good for women?
Well, in a nutshell, it's not good for women because it simply purports to take more guns away from more people. It sets up a structure so that any dating partner or former dating partner can go get an ex parte order, meaning they can go to a judge by themselves without the other person being there to defend themselves, and they can say, oh, you know, my former dating partner is being abusive. I don't think he or she should have guns, and the guns are taken away from that former dating partner. And the insidious thing is that, of course, this hurts women who might actually have been in an abusive relationship, and the abuser is accusing them, the victim, of being the abusive one, and maybe that woman has a handgun for self-defense and is trying to get out of that abusive relationship. And so the gun could actually get taken away from the victim, from the innocent, law-abiding, peaceful victim who's trying to be empowered and take care of herself and maybe get out of a dangerous situation. And taking away her means of self-defense means maybe she's stuck in that abusive situation. So it actually increases, potentially, violence against women.
Isn't this kind of also like it sounds like it's like a red flag law, right? Because
Absolutely. It's red flag law. It's just, you know, they tried to bring up red flag laws and grassroots reacted strongly against it. So they said, oh, you know what? Okay, we won't do red flag right now, but let's just rebrand it. Let's just call it something else and bring it right back up. And, of course, you can't turn down something that protects women, right? So that's exactly what they're doing. It's a red flag law.
It's like, yeah, that's the title of the bill, to cure cancer. I mean, you know, that's what they do. That's what this is. We've seen this movie before. Okay, so I'm quoting your piece. Many women like myself carry guns for self-defense from thugs and criminals. But provisions in the Disarm Women Act would allow for any dating partner or former dating partner to strip a gun-owning woman of her constitutional rights with just a phone call to a judge. A woman's guns are confiscated with no warning, no due process, just like a red flag law. In fact, we've had a lot of experience with these quickie proceedings, and we know that they are often used by an angry ex to extract revenge on a former partner. And then you talk about a California example. So this is not hypotheticals. We actually have, you know, these instances where it's actually happened. Tell us about California.
Exactly. So California has a red flag law, and this is one of many examples we could use, but there was a cheating husband who used his state's red flag law. He used California's red flag law, went to a judge and said, oh, my abusive wife has a gun, please take it away. And they took away his wife's Glock under the red flag law. So, you know, I guess he's afraid of her finding out and getting free from him. I'm not sure exactly what the situation was, but yeah, that's how he used it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it really is, it's a huge problem. So what's going to happen? I mean, you think this is going to get through the Senate? I mean, I know it got through the House.
Right. So right now it's in a little bit of state of limbo because it's summer and they're taking some breaks. So it passed the House. The Pelosi's House was very excited about it, and there was you could definitely say there was a bipartisan vote. It was not just Democrats who supported this bill in the House, and that's why we're worried about it, and that's why we need a lot of public pressure in the Senate. So the Senate is looking at it now. I was in D.C. with GOA a few weeks ago to meet with some staffers and let them know in no way, shape, or form should they ever consider anything like a red flag law. I specifically let them know that when Texas tried to bring that up last year, grassroots shot it down and made it clear that nobody was going to get reelected if they ever tried a red flag law. So I hope that struck a chord with some of our senators. But yeah, we're trying to encourage them now to get rid of all the anti-gun provisions in the Violence Against Women Act. The bill, what they're trying to do is a reauthorization, but adding a lot of stuff to the bill. And we just are saying, get rid of that extra stuff you're adding to it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's that, there's got to be, well, there maybe not, who knows, but there's probably some good things in this bill. The Violence Against Women Act. They've just now added this, and it certainly is a problem. And so, yeah, the goal would be for the Senate Republicans to just take this language out and pass it without it, and then of course, we can get reauthorized. I'm sure the House will throw a fit, but I mean, this really is something that is a foot in the door. We know that the left's goal. I mean, we've talked about this before, Rachel, but the left's goal is to confiscate our guns. It just is. That's what they want to do. And so any way to move that needle is a threat to us.
Exactly. And I say all the time, modern gun control, I don't think it looks like the legislature passing some law that immediately forces everybody to give up every single one of their guns and sending all the military to the door to take away guns. I don't think they're stupid enough to do that. But what they are going to do is pass bills like this that take guns away from select groups of the population, and they're conditioning people more and more to think it's okay to do that. So for the government to decide who from whom they can take away guns, and pretty soon people are going to wake up and say, "Oh, now today I'm in that group that gets my guns taken away." Yeah,
you are exactly right about that. And here's the thing with women. I would say in this situation, the point could be made that they're the ones that need the guns. If you're a woman and you're in an abusive relationship, all of a sudden that gun is an equalizer. It's if anything a deterrent. And there's a lot of people. I know here in Arkansas we've had politicians, that certainly encourage with our constitutional carry situation that we have. If you are in an abusive relationship, we've encouraged like an educational effort to let a woman know that you don't need a permit, you don't have to get a permission slip from the government, that you can go arm yourself to protect yourself right now. And a lot of women don't know that here in our state. So, if there's going to be any chance that this law makes it harder for a woman to defend herself against and see, that's what's so interesting. It's very ironic that this provision is in the Violence Against Women Act, and hopefully that point, hopefully that point will resonate with some Republicans in the Senate.
Yeah, well, I think that if the feminists had any moral consistency, they'd be the best gun rights activists in the world, because guns empower women like nothing else. I grew up observing domestic violence, and it's horrible. I don't do anything to stop violence against women. But taking away more guns doesn't, because I've also seen women who are so courageous and ready to take the steps to get out of a horrible abusive relationship and protect themselves and protect their kids. And just mere gun ownership and the idea that for a woman who's being abused, the idea that, I could actually protect myself and my kids, and I could get us out of here. I hate to see anything that strips her of that empowerment, and that's exactly what this bill does. It disempowers women. It steps backwards for what women's rights activists have been trying to do for a long time. Yeah. Terrible bill.
It really is. Well, let's hope that it changes. And
and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms.
First, you can catch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. Here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. And that goes for Android users as well.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
So then after your education, I'm assuming, married, you got any kids?
One child. We have one daughter who's trying to follow Dad's footsteps, but she went into psychology and she's doing cancer research she was working at Hopkins, then moved to, got an offer at Nashville, at Vanderbilt. She's over doing cancer research in Nashville.
So then you went to work where?
Well, I went to work, I retired from the Federal Reserve first time, and that was in 2005. And then I took a position at Computer Science Corporation in 6 months later, and stayed with them until 2012, and that's when we moved to Arkansas.
So tell me about the Federal Reserve. What was it like working there?
That was great. It was just absolutely great. You learned a lot about the central bank, the United States. I saw a lot of people in and out of. I was at the Board of Governors in Washington D.C. So I was there when Chairman Greenspan, Alan Greenspan, was the chairman. So a lot of the politicians would come in the mornings, and during the day you'd see it was like a revolving door. They always wanted to get information from him and what was happening. They got to see what's actually made D.C. beat back in the heartbeat of D.C. back in the day. But I don't know if it's that way any longer.
Wow, you mean like the Federal? So you think the Federal Reserve was driving the ship?
Well, just think about all the economic policies that came out of the Federal Reserve that were good for the country at the time. And the politicians wanted to be right up there knowing what's happening. So
no question.
Follow the money.
Exactly.
Follow the money.
Exactly. Again, we're talking with Arkansan Bob Rodweller. And so you're retired now. You already mentioned that you're still teaching, though, keeping busy teaching some classes. What else do you do to stay busy in retirement?
Well, I was riding my bicycle, and I think we talked about that. In 2007, I rode my bicycle across the United States raising money for Fisher House and wounded veterans.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey folks, you're listening to the best of Conduit News Radio with me, Paul Harrell.
Say welcome back to the show. We've got Michael Busler on the line. He is a professor of economics from Stockton University in New Jersey. You've seen his stuff published, Newsmax, LifeSet, townhall.com. Dr. Busler, how are you, sir?
Good morning, Paul. How are you? It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir. It's always great to have you. I wanted to have you on to talk a little bit more about this minimum wage topic. We've got polls showing that Americans are concerned about the impact the increased minimum wage will have on the economy. I know there's a caveat, like at first they support it, but then they want, if you give them the right information about the negative things that it could do, then they're not so sure. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so historically, every time they suggested raising the minimum wage, the American public overwhelmingly supported it. Now, usually the increases in the minimum wage were 80 cents an hour, $1 an hour, and Americans, because they're compassionate, tended to support that. This time, the House of Representatives wants to raise the minimum wage more than double it, from the current $7.25 an hour up to $15 an hour, and they're going to take 5 or 6 years to get there. Now, with that size of a increase in the minimum wage, it's going to cause far more harm than any benefit. So supporters, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in Congress would say, well, look, if you raise the minimum wage, it will lift people out of poverty. People who are working hard 40 hours a week deserve what Bernie Sanders refers to as a living wage, and $15 an hour is a minimum. They deserve it. We should pay them. So that's their argument. Now, what you're referring to is some information that came out talking about what the longer-term effects of the minimum wage would be. The Congressional Budget Office estimated that 1.3 million people would be lifted out of poverty. The problem is, when you raise wages like that and the workers aren't really doing anything more for it, when wages end up going up that much, it ends up reducing the number of jobs available. Now, some economists will say that's not true, but if you look at reality, I think you'll agree it is true. $15 an hour turns out to be about $31,000 a year, plus with the Social Security that the company has to pay and some other costs, turns out to be about $35,000 a year to hire somebody who has absolutely no skills. A minimum wage worker is somebody who doesn't really know how to do anything. They don't have any skills. Yeah. So how many jobs will be available for people with no skills that the employer has to pay $35,000 a year to?
I think that's why, with the fast food situation, exactly. the skill there is to hand a bag of food out of a window. And that's not a specialized skill. That's something we can all do. And that's why these fast food restaurants are going to start putting they already are. They're putting automation in their stores.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the company, the fast food chain says, look, I've got 5 people in the front here. 3 of them take orders and 2 of them handle payment. Well, as long as I'm paying them $7, $8, $9 an hour, it makes sense for me to do that. There is an alternative. Economists would say you're going to replace labor with capital. So I could bring in some of those automated machines. So they're touch screens.
to take the order and a credit card at the touchscreen to make a payment. Well, that's fairly expensive, and I haven't done it so far. However, if I have to pay these 5 people I have instead of the $15,000, $16,000, $18,000 a year I pay them, if I now have to pay them over $30,000 a year, and I've got 5 of them there, it simply isn't going to be profitable for me. And now it's cheaper to get the touch screens in there and take the place of labor. So automation is happening, artificial intelligence is happening, but the faster you push up the minimum wage, the more likely you are to get automation coming in, and you'll see a severe reduction in the number of jobs available. Yeah. Look, the unemployment rate is down under 4%, but if you look at the unemployment rate for teenagers, which has historically been in the 18-20%, it still is at 13%. Part of the reason for that is you set a wage above what the market would pay somebody, and when that happens, you end up with unemployment.
Also, can you address the fact that some of these people on the left that want this higher minimum wage, most of them, their philosophy is also just a bigger government in general, and they're going to get more tax dollars when they artificially increase the minimum wage. Then they're going to get higher tax revenues to government, right?
Yeah, if you look at the big picture here. The U.S. went from being a new country to the #1 economy in the world, the largest, most prosperous economy in the world in about 150 years. Other countries were hundreds, in some cases thousands of years older. Well, how did that happen? I believe the reason was 4 things. One, our system encouraged individual freedom. You were free to pursue what you wanted to do. Secondly, we encouraged individual responsibility. People took care of themselves. Thirdly, we had low rates of taxation. So when you earned income, you got to keep most of it. That was plenty of incentive. And fourthly, we had a limited role for government. The government provided the services that they do, defense of the country, a legal system, et cetera, and really didn't get involved much in business. So individual freedom, individual responsibility, low rates of taxation, and a limited role for government made our economy go from 0 to the largest in a short period of time. All of these social programs that the Democrats are putting forth, free college tuition, pay off your student loans, free health care for everybody, we're going to raise the minimum wage, all of those programs, which they believe are geared to cure perceived social injustices, are all opposite to those 4 principles. The government takes over industries, you're going to lose individual freedom. The government provides services for you, you're going to lose individual responsibility. In order for the government to pay for this, they're going to have to raise taxes not just on the wealthy, but on everybody, so we'll have a higher rate of taxation. And now we have a large role for government. So it's exactly opposite to what made the country great.
I mean, I certainly agree with you. I also know that, this is, the minimum wage, now that you're paying people, mandated a higher wage, you now are getting more tax dollars from them. You now are, the amount of money going to the government is now increasing. And I think that's another reason why they love the minimum wage and increasing it to $15 an hour. Here in Arkansas, we're on there was a ballot initiative that got put forward to the people, and lo and behold, they voted for an increase in the minimum wage, and we're going to be looking in a couple of years, it's a phase-in, but an $11 minimum wage in a state like Arkansas that's got a low cost of living. This is going to cripple small businesses in our state, not to mention what, may be considered nationally.
Yeah, I live in New Jersey, along the New Jersey shore. Here, they voted to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. It goes up about roughly $1 an hour over the next 5 or 6 years. It's 8-something now. I talk to small business people, especially in these resorts town. They don't know how they're going to stay in business. They can't possibly pay people $15 an hour. I mean, these are college kids that work in the summer. They're glad to have a job down at the shore. If they have to pay them $15 an hour, they can't possibly stay in business. Where do the Democrats think that money is coming from? So if the labor costs are going up, there's only two choices. Either business has got to cover it and reduce their profit. And, of course, if the profit gets reduced enough, there's no reason to be in business, and people just go out of business. So business will try to absorb it, or you raise prices to consumers. And there's a limit to how much consumers, how much you can raise prices. So any way you look at it, it's either going to hurt business or it's going to hurt consumers. It's going to cause unemployment for a large number of workers. The CBO says you're likely to lose more jobs than the number of people that benefit. So where does it help somebody? There's only 1.3 million people, according to CBO, will be helped. But look at all the other people that you're harming as a result of this. My view is you're far better to let the market determine what a fair wage would be rather than have one artificially set by the government.
No, absolutely. I completely agree with you there. We're talking with Dr. Michael Busler, public policy analyst, professor of economics at Stockton University in the high-tax state of New Jersey. Dr. Busler, on the $15 minimum, on the $15 minimum wage, did you see where the Bernie Sanders campaign was receiving criticism for not paying $15 because he was overworking his employees and they were really actually making more like 11 or 12? So now he is, in order to meet that threshold, in order to check that box, he's now limiting the number of hours that his campaign staffers can work so that he can say, I am paying them $15 an hour.
And that's exactly how business people would react to this. Their costs have to be held in line, or they won't have profitability, and if they don't have profitability, they're not going to be there anymore. So to hold the cost in line, if they have to increase wages up to $15 an hour, they're either going to reduce the number of people they have, or have the people that are there work fewer hours. And an employer would reason, look, I was paying you $10 an hour. Now I'm paying you $15 an hour. Shouldn't I expect you to produce a little bit more if I'm paying you that much more? So they reason the same thing as Bernie Sanders did, and the higher wage results in less hours for workers that are there or fewer jobs available.
Dr. Busler, I'd love to get your thoughts on the debt and this debt ceiling compromise that we're hearing about in the news this morning. No one really wants to talk about national debt anymore. Do you still think it's a serious problem?
It is a huge problem, and it's going to get even more serious. Here's the real problem why it's not being addressed. The public debt is up to $22 trillion. That's all the money, the deficits we've had over time that we had to finance by selling bonds. It adds to the public debt. The interest on the public debt alone is turning out to be about 13 or 14% of the government budget, so it's turning out to be a big number. We've got to get the budget as close to balanced as possible. Now, why can't we do that? The federal government will spend $4.4 trillion this year. Of that total, a little over 60%, $2.7 trillion, is for entitlement programs, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. You add in the interest on the debt, which also has to be paid, and now you're up over 70% of the budget. Government spending is very difficult to do anything about. If you say, any politician says, look, to get government spending down, we're going to have to reduce spending in Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid, politically it's a disaster. Even if you even mention it, it has very negative political connotations. Eventually, somebody's going to have to take a look at this and say, look, these entitlement programs, we've got to get them under control. They're bankrupting the country. The last thing we need to do is to add more entitlement programs like free college and paying off college debt. We don't need any more, and indeed, we have to rein these in. I've looked at this. There's no good solution to this, which is why everybody's staying away from it. So if you can't find a good solution, the next best thing to do is to find a solution that's the least bad. And I think the only way out of this is we're going to have to significantly raise the retirement age. Social Security is already going up to 67. We're going to have to raise both Medicare and Social Security up to at least 70. and probably a little bit longer. Part of the reason, too, is that people are living a lot longer now. When Social Security was put in 1935, you retired at 65, the average life expectancy was 67. So you only lived and collected a couple of years. Well, that made sense. Now, people are living well into their 80s, into their 90s, and every day you see people that are living up over 100 now. Well, there's no way Social Security, you can start collecting Social Security and Medicare at 67 or 65 and expect that to cover you for the next 30, 35 years. It just isn't going to happen. There's not enough money to do that. When Social Security was started, there were 7 people, roughly, working for every one collecting. There are now 3 people working for every one collecting, and as the baby boomers continue to retire, it'll get even worse, less than 3 people. It is not a sustainable system. At some point, somebody's going to have to face it.
So I'm 35, Dr. Bussler, and I'm just wondering, do you think, I'm paying Social Security taxes.
Yeah.
Am I going to see any of that money?
You know, I tell my students, and I've been telling them for years, I said, if I was you, I wouldn't count on anything from Social Security. So plan your own retirement, set up your own retirement account. If I'm wrong, and I hope I am, and there is money for you from Social Security when you retire, then you'll just be in a better position because you'll have to put away money yourself plus Social Security. If it turns out I'm right and Social Security can't cover it, then you don't have anything to worry about because you planned for your own
There you go.
retirement.
There you go. Don't. It's the government dependency. When the government fails you, there are consequences for it. Dr. Michael Bussler, we always appreciate you coming on the program. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Paul. It was my pleasure.
All righty. Yes, sir. Mine too.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms.
First, you can catch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. Here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. And that goes for Android users as well.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
And it was about 4,286 miles. I was going to do it again on the 10th year anniversary, 2017. So that kept me busy until I wound up in the hospital with ventricular tachycardia.
Wow.
Or VTAC. But that slowed me up a little bit. So what I've done is I've started to write and just reflect on life. And I'm just watching politics a little bit more than I would care to these days. But
so are you're involved with political organizations? I mean, you live in Washington County, so I mean, the Washington County Republican Committee. Do you go to those meetings?
Well, I was going to those meetings up until, I guess, right after I got out of the hospital. And at that point in time, I just, it wasn't going anywhere.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hey folks, you're listening to the best of Conduit News Radio with me, Paul Harrell. It's always great to have Dr. Jeremy Horpedal on the program. Jeremy, how are you doing, sir?
I'm great, Paul. How are you this morning?
I'm great. Now, I want to remind everybody, Jeremy is with the Arkansas Center for Research in Economics. I wanted to have you on because I know we've talked about this before, but your study on special elections is so good. We talked about it before, but we still have, in Arkansas, a string of special elections. There's, been one in Fort Smith. There's been some in Central Arkansas. There's one coming up right after school starts in Jonesboro to try to raise taxes. And, your research, well, let me just start there. What made you want to do this research?
So I got interested in this actually as I was working on another project. We wrote a big book on taxes in Arkansas, about 100 pages long. And as we were doing the research for that book, I came across all this great data on special elections. I was actually able to get data on almost every election going back to the early 1980s. And as an economist, I get really excited when I see this big set of data. And I thought, what can I do with this? And looking at special elections and when do they pass and when do they fail, that's something that you see in the news, like you said. There's one somewhere almost every month. So I just started looking at that data, and I think we got some pretty interesting results here. One of the main results, I think, as we've talked about before, is that most of these, and we look at sales tax elections, which are the vast majority of these special elections, almost all of them, 80%, take place during sometime other than a general or primary election. So 83% are during either it's a standalone election or it's at some time other than a general or primary election. And what we also found is that voter turnout is much, much lower during these special elections. We found that on average, voter turnout is only 19% for these special elections, whereas it's over 40% for general elections. And then finally, the other thing, which I think is the main result, is that these tax increases, sales tax increases, are much more likely to pass during a special election. 3/4 of them pass if they're during a special election, and fewer than half pass if it's during a general election.
And that's to me is sad because if it were an emergency, let's say a tornado comes through town, okay, go for it. But there are people who are you're an economist, so there are people who are at work. They're trying to put food on their family. They're trying they're trying to put food on the table for their family, and they're doing these things, and they pretty much know. What? You vote once every 2 years. You really have the big vote once every 4 years, and that's pretty much it. The rest of the time, a lot of people don't even listen to the news except once every 4 years to figure out who they want to vote for president. And that's the way a lot of people work. And they're not looking into their local tax rate. But if they actually got a vote, if they were there during the general election, most of your hard-working Arkansans don't want to pay more taxes. They want the taxes to stay where they are.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms.
First, you can catch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. Here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. And that goes for Android users as well.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
To me, we're not doing. They were just talking business as usual, and that was the thing that I didn't want to see, because I thought there's a lot of things that need to be done, and they talked about things that making things different, but I never saw anything happening. For example, the Electoral College. There's a big push across the United States to change the Electoral College, or have what is it, the state, convention of states.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hey folks, you're listening to the best of Conduit News Radio with me, Paul Harrell.
Yeah, and I think one other type of election, which are school board elections, those used to kind of be at just any time the school district wanted to set it before. A few years ago, the legislature said, we're still going to have it be a standalone election, but we're at least going to put it on a regular date so people can expect it. So school board elections now they're special in the sense that they're a standalone election, but they have it on a regular date. There have been bills in the legislature the past 2 sessions to do the same thing for these tax elections, these tax votes, but it hasn't gotten through. So there are people, trying to get this changed. And actually, the title of the bill says, the goal of this is to increase voter turnout. That's explicitly what they're trying to do. Make sure everyone is having a chance to be aware of the election and have a say. But as of yet, none of those have passed. So the cities and counties can still hold these with a lot of discretion as to when the election is.
We're talking with Dr. Jeremy Horpedahl from the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics. He's also an associate professor at the University of Central Arkansas. So I can't help but bring in, and I know, we're not necessarily talking, well, maybe feel free, to talk about the ethical problem with this, because that's really what I think this is. Political views aside, if you've got a politician who's on the far right that wants lower taxes or maybe wants to pass a tax cut during the special election, or you've got, most of the time, these politicians want to pass tax increases. And this study is very well done, again, from 1981 to 2018. Regardless of where you stand, the concept of good government, we want, these democratic elections to mean something. And so you would think, regardless of what you believe personally as an elected official, that you want the largest sample of the people you govern to come to the ballot box. And the reality is, according to this study, in a special election, you get an average of 19% voter turnout versus 44%, according to your numbers, if you were to hold it during a general election. And so, I have called it deception, Jeremy, because I think that's really kind of what it is. I don't think it's ethical to do this when, we're talking about the people's money.
Yeah, that's something that with the data we tried to get some information about, why are these being held at different times? But I couldn't really find anything on that. So as an economist, I can't really comment on, why they're doing this. I can just talk about what's the result. I think one important thing to remember here with sales taxes is that the Tax Foundation in Washington, D.C. just released a report this month. They do an update every 6 months on what states have the highest sales tax rates when you take the state rate and add in all the local rates. And Arkansas now, for the first time, has the highest sales tax rate in the country. We're tied with Tennessee at about 9.5%. So we have the highest sales tax rate in the country when you take account of local rates. And so, part of my motivation for looking at this is to say, why is that?
Yeah.
Why do we have such a high sales tax rate? And when you look at Tennessee, they don't have an income tax. So among states which have an income tax, we have by far the highest sales tax. And I think that this is, we're not the only state that allows this, but Arkansas has very loose restrictions about when these can be held, when these elections can be held, what they can be about. So I think this is at least part of the reason that we have such high sales tax rates here, is because there's just a lot of discretion for local governments to hold these elections. And I should also say that, I've been called to testify about some of these bills that have been proposed. And groups like the Arkansas Municipal League, they're actually okay with this change as long as there are provisions in it to allow, if there's a tornado and they need to raise taxes to help pay for that, for emergencies. And the bills have included that. The Municipal League, which is the main kind of lobbying group for city governments, they're actually okay with these changes, but still it hasn't gone through.
Well, I hope we can get another shot at it. I like how you have the percentages, but you also have the total number of special elections from 1981 to 2018, 798 elections, which, special or others. Now, talk about the cost of that, right? Because there's also an added cost of taxpayer money to put on a special election.
Right. So this is something where we didn't have data on all, 1,000 elections, but we had a number that we could find data on. And so we said, what's kind of the average cost, depending on the population size, multiplied by how many of these there's have been. And we estimate that the total cost has been about $10 million over that, it's over, a 30-year time period. So in some sense, maybe $10 million isn't very much, but this is an additional cost that cities and counties are incurring. If you hold it during the general election, there's no cost to doing it, right? So for a city, maybe for a smaller city, maybe it costs $20,000 to do this. That's $20,000 that's in some sense completely unnecessary. It's just one more line on the general election ballot or the primary election, but they're going out of their way to have a completely separate election, which is a cost whether the thing passes or not. So we did find that, it varies depending on the size of the electorate, but we found close to $10 million of additional costs that cities and counties have incurred since the 1980s.
So back to your previous point about Arkansas now having the highest sales tax in the nation, or tied with Tennessee. The distinction there would be that Tennessee has no income tax, right?
Right. They have no income tax, and their property taxes they're a little higher than us, but they're pretty comparable. So on property tax, about the same. On sales tax, we're the same, but they have no income tax. So that's a
loaded question.
That's a big difference.
Loaded question. How do they do it? How do they survive in on that? I mean, is it population? They got more population than us. I mean, what gives? Why can't we lower our sales tax rate?
Well, part of it is just spending is different. So they spend, it's not dramatically less, but they spend a little bit less than us per capita. They have more people, right? So for certain things, they can kind of spread the cost over more people. So that's in some sense an advantage. But as you know, I've got some other research that kind of looks at this spending and compares Arkansas to other states. And we're working on an update to that as well to kind of look in more detail about, as you've reported, and I know you like this paper we've written about how Arkansas state government spends a lot more than neighboring states. We're kind of trying to drill down to see why is that. What areas do we spend more on? What has increased? And so we're trying to figure that out. So, a large part of what drives the need for higher taxes is higher spending. But also, when you increase taxes, they do always find something to spend that money on. So, in some sense, it goes both ways. But the spending is the it's clearly the other side of it.
Okay, I mean, I'm glad. I appreciate that. I think that's certainly something that we've heard, even from a lot of lawmakers, in this last session, people, saying, listen, there really wasn't much talk about, getting the spending under control, or cutting spending so we don't have to raise taxes over here. And now, of course, the people are facing a net tax increase for the next couple of fiscal years or several fiscal years. Dr. Jeremy Horpedahl, I always love having you on. I love your research. Please let me know, or I'll certainly be watching the ACRE website for the updated paper on spending and what separates Arkansas from our neighbors. And really appreciate the work you do, sir.
Well, thanks, Paul. I appreciate you having me on, and I hope you have a good day.
Yes, sir. Have a great day. Folks, we're going to make a separate YouTube video of this. It'll be up at conduitnews.com. Again, I want to go over these numbers one more time. Throw this up. Can you throw this up real quick? I want to end here. Arkansas local sales tax elections. Look at that graphic right there. 44% voter turnout in general elections. When you have a 44% voter turnout, you wind out with the tax increase passing 46% of the time. In a primary, you have 24% voter turnout, and the tax increase passes 61% of the time. In a special election, you have a 19% voter turnout, again, from 1981 to 2018, and a 76% passage rate for the tax increase. This is why communities like Fort Smith and Jonesboro try to do special elections, because they know that if they do a special election, there's less voter turnout, and there's a higher probability that the tax increase will be passed. I think that is wrong. What do you think?
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms.
First, you can catch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab, Here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. And that goes for Android users as well.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
And I'm thinking that's the wrong push. There's other things to go about this. You bring up some suggestions about how to do that. And it's okay, thanks. On to the next topic. So I thought, I almost lost my life. I'm not going to sit here and waste my time doing that. But I'm still friends with some from my combat buddies, and we share back and forth information from time to time, and we write to each other. So it's also teaching some of the classes, and I've also taught a class on electoral college, and it's allowed me to go back and reread the Federalist Papers a couple times. So if people really want to learn about what's happening in today.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hey folks, you're listening to the best of Conduit News Radio with me, Paul Harrell.
All right, here we go, folks. Welcome back to the program. On this "Send Her Back" chant with Ilhan Omar, and everyone again on social media is freaking out. Listen, I think Greg Gutfeld has actually the best take on this. He said, "Pure mob insanity?" ? Apparently, you've never been to a sporting event. So that's a good point. I mean, we like to take our politics so seriously, but from a sporting event angle, a lot of people say things that they mean, but they maybe phrase them a way you know what I'm saying? I don't know. It is fascinating. And listen, I know everyone feels the need to point out that we shouldn't do that because she's for example, Guy Benson, "Send her back" is an appalling chant. Omar's a U.S. citizen. My less catchy chant would be condemn her bigotry, combat her radicalism, and investigate her seriously alleged fraud. Yeah, definitely. We were just going over all of that. But at the same time, somebody on my Facebook wrote, is it possible that she could be sent back if they, actually look at the evidence and criminal charges are brought up? I'm not really sure. Folks, I'd like to actually talk about, kind of expand on this, the anti-Semitic comments from the left. I want to welcome to the program. We have Mr. David Rubin is with us. David is the former mayor of Shiloh, Israel. He's on the phone this morning. David, how are you, sir?
I'm fine. Good to be with you.
David, you are also the author of the book Trump and the Jews. What's that book about, sir?
Well, the book Trump and the Jews is about exactly what it says, Trump and the Jews, the relationship between Trump and the Jewish people, Israel, the charges of anti-Semitism incredibly against him, along with an examination of who the real anti-Semites are.
So what was the motivation? That was the motivation then to expose who are the real anti-Semites, and who are they in your opinion?
Well, look, we always knew that there were some neo-Nazis and anti-Semites on the far right, but they're actually very few in numbers, whereas the anti-Semitism in the far left is growing in leaps and bounds, and there are quite a number of members of Congress who definitely would fit the definition of an anti-Semite. And it's very troubling. It's not just those 4 congresswomen. It's also those on the far left, quite a few members of the Congressional Black Caucus. And, this is all very troubling, but it's the reality. And President Trump, it's kind of fascinating about the criticism of President Trump by some of the more liberal Jews, who many of whom have called him anti-Semitic, which is absolutely absurd because he actually has stronger connections in many ways with the Jewish people than some of these liberal Jews do.
And I hear he's really popular in Israel. Is that true?
He is wildly popular. And it goes across the political spectrum, too. It's not just those on the right, and it's not just those at the center. And it also includes a lot of Israelis on the left. And the reason for that is very simple. He has done more than any president in American history to strengthen the relationship between Israel and the United States. It's that simple.
Meanwhile, I saw this. Again, we're talking with David Rubin. He's the former mayor of Shiloh, Israel. He's the author of a book, Trump and the Jews. You need to check it out. I'm going to talk about his organization here in just a minute. But meanwhile, this is the Twitter war that's been going on between Donald Trump and really the Democrats all week. He's also calling out the entire party because now the party seems to be embracing their far-left anti-Semitic fringe, which is also, socialist. Then you got Joe Biden. You got Pete Butt Edge, as Trump called him last night, criticizing Israeli, quote, occupation. What do you think about that, David?
Yes, in a minute, Pete Butt Edge will be accusing us of homophobia if I criticize him. Look, there are people there on the far left of the Democratic Party, and unfortunately they're becoming the core of the Democratic Party because everyone else is afraid of them because they're so aggressive. But instead of looking at the content of what President Trump says or what President Trump does, they just call names, call everyone a racist, and they'll invent new diseases like Islamophobia and homophobia, and soon there'll be a new disease called people of color phobia. It's just ridiculous. It makes absolutely no sense. And President Trump has just been doing a great job, and he's, I look at things in his foreign policy where he's been consistent, where he's strengthened ties with true allies of the United States. He has forged new alliances such as Israel and Saudi Arabia and a couple of other Arab countries that heretofore did not have a great relationship with Israel. And it's an alliance against the threat from Iran. So he's just done a lot of very great things in foreign policy, and that's not even to get into the tremendous job he's done with the American economy. But these Democrats, they have no substance to what they're saying, and the ones that are more moderate, like perhaps Joe Biden, they're running scared. They're afraid of their own shadows.
I'm glad that you brought up the alliance with Saudi Arabia and Israel because that's certainly something that the mainstream media will never, ever talk about or, give the president any credit for that at all. And mainly because maybe they don't want to acknowledge what a threat Iran actually is and how the last administration, we're cutting these deals that make absolutely no sense. Again, we're talking with David Rubin, the former mayor of Shiloh, Israel. He's the author of the book, Trump and the Jews. Now, Rubin, or David, you're also the founder and president of Shiloh Israel Children's Fund. Now, this was established after you and your then 3-year-old son were wounded in a terror attack. Tell us about that, sir.
Well, we were wounded when we were coming back from Jerusalem. I was driving my car. My son was sitting behind me in the baby seat. As you said, he was 3 years old. And halfway home, the car is suddenly ambushed by Islamic terrorists from the Palestinian Authority. They were on the side of the road with AK-47 assault rifles shooting at my car. And the car went completely dead when the bullets hit. I got shot in the leg. My son, we later found out, had gotten shot in the head. And the bullet that went through into his head and through his neck missed his brainstem by 1 millimeter. But there was a long recovery period after that, and thank God we were able to finally get the car moving and got away from the terrorists. But after our 2 years or so of recovery and post-trauma psychological counseling for my son, I realized that something had to be done with this, because nothing like that happens for no good reason. There has to be a good thing that comes out of everything. And I had a vision of a therapeutic educational campus for children that have suffered from terrorism. And that's what has come to fruition. That's the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund. And we have over 2,000 children on one campus, and they have formal therapy, there is informal therapy, there are all kinds of educational programs, and we are truly restoring some of the lost innocence of childhood for these victims of the Islamic terrorism.
So, given that context, and by the way, thank you for making something positive, what was meant for evil being now used for good. Thank you for that. But giving that context of that trauma and that tragedy, bringing it back to what the Democrats are being forced to embrace right now, which are anti-Semitic comments, which, when it comes to the case of Ilhan Omar, are rooted in a Muslim Islamic worldview, and it's the same worldview. If we're honest, the same worldview that those people with AK-47s had on the road that day when they shot at you, sir. So, I mean, this isn't just politics. This is real, isn't it?
Yes, it's very real, and it's if it was only me and my son, then we could say perhaps it's a fluke. But there are thousands of Israeli civilians that have been killed or wounded in terrorist attacks in recent years, and the same terrorists, the terrorists that tried to kill us and that killed and wounded so many others, they're from the same ideology as those terrorists who killed and wounded all the others, and they're the same ideology as terrorists that attacked the Twin Towers in 9/11. So, this is so when you have somebody coming into Congress, two individuals who adhere to that same ideology and don't hesitate to preach it, that's something that's very frightening. But it's more disturbing when the leadership of the Democratic Party doesn't have the guts to stand up, doesn't have the courage to stand up and denounce it unequivocally in a State of the Congress resolution. When they tried to pass that resolution, they didn't have the courage to stand up with it, and they didn't have the courage to stand against the criticism of the far left that was saying, no, you can't condemn anti-Semitism unless you also condemn all these other so-called bigotries and these other so-called diseases, psychological diseases,